Hi. Sorry to interrupt lunch, but we'd like to get started again, and we have a special guest that I have the pleasure of introducing, and I've known him for a while. So the Department of Environmental Conservation Commissioner Basil Seggos is with us. So we'll get him up here in a second, but I'm going to take part of his time to plug Rockefeller a little bit. So again, this is a great collaboration we're doing with the SF, and we want to do more of this in the future. But I thought I'd let some of the folks in this room know some of the other projects we're working on very quickly, so that they may be things that you know of people who want to engage with us on these projects. So, in addition to climate and environmental research, which Laura Rabineau has been running this conference and doing a great job and works on that, we do significantly other stuff, federal and fiscal stuff, including the balance of payments research, which Laura Schultz, which is sitting in the front, works on and does a great job with, which shows how much New York State is getting from the federal government versus how much New York taxpayers are giving to the federal government. And that's a widely cited piece of research that we've been doing at Rockefeller for a significant amount of time. Also, and I think some of you may have seen it, and it is actually one of our main contributors is Oswego researcher, is we do a significant amount of gun violence research and are actually now embarking on a gun violence research consortium, which again is unfortunate that we have to study something like that, but we do a significant amount of work across the spectrum of gun and gun violence related issues. I think we've also been working significantly and done a lot of research and are working with state government actually pretty closely on this whole question of legalization of marijuana, which I was surprised in some of the environmental conversations today to see that, that topic has come up. So the Institute does a lot of work in that area. We've also done a lot of work on things which I consider in the micro realm. So, for example, we've done Stories from Sullivan, which is a research series that looks at opioid abuse in largely rural areas in New York State. And I think it's shined an exceptional light on these issues and how this is not just, this is a problem that's facing the entire state, not just pockets of the state. And in the interest of brevity, I will stop, but Rockefeller is doing lots and lots of projects, including now research into pre-K to 12 higher education policy, where we're trying to track kids from their earliest stages of their educational development right through college and into the job market. And this is something where I think New York has actually been behind the other states in putting this kind of research together and facilitating that. So we're trying to do that at Rockefeller. So that's the end of my pitch, even though we're doing a lot more than that. But I want to introduce the commissioner, who I absolutely consider a friend and have known for quite a while when I had, again, other evil jobs in state government. Commissioner Seggos has served as DEC commissioner since October of 2015. Just that statement alone tells you a lot about our commissioner and his abilities, because no one stays around that long unless they're really good at what they do. And he's leading an agency of over 3,000 people. He's accomplished major things, including instrumental in the passage of the state's nation-leading climate change law, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, and he serves as the co-chair of its implementing body, the Climate Action Council. I don't know if many people know this about the commissioner, but he is also an officer in the U.S. Army Reserve. And I think that his military presence occasionally benefited him in some meetings that I've been in with him. Prior to being DEC Commissioner, Seggos served as the Deputy Secretary for the Environment for the governor, which is when I first got to know him. And before his career in state government, Seggos served as Vice President of Business Development at the New, is that the right pronunciation? New Corporation, a clean tech private equity company. I could go on and on. Basil graduated with a BA from Trinity College and earned his law degree from the Pace School of Law in 2001, where he received the Environmental Award and Alumni Achievement Award. He's had a fabulous career and been an asset to New York State, and let's have him come up here.
And just to be clear, Bob, it wasn't my military bearing, it was that I was wearing my helmet and body armor in those meetings. So that's how we got through most of the time. But Bob is right, a terrific friend. We've had some incredible experiences over the years. Everyone here knows Bob, but come December through March, April, there's no more important person in really the entire state than Bob Megna when he was budget director. Managing a budget of $60 billion, whatever it was when you were at the helm. Tremendously difficult job. And Bob never let it change who he was. He was always accessible, always welcoming. I could always walk in and start pounding his door and asking for money. He never found any of it. He always said, "Get out." But I appreciate the love, Bob, and really right back at you, sir. To Joni Mahoney, really another outstanding human being and someone I'm just so proud to call a close friend. Have worked with Bob and Joni in so many respects over the years. You're a terrific president of this beautiful institution. Thank you for opening this place up to us today. Let's give a big round of applause to Joni. And she's a good picker of cookies as well. The black and white cookies are fantastic. We have also SUNY Chancellor here as well. I know you all are well aware that she's here, but she's doing a fantastic job, Vice Chancellor Stanley, and Mike as well, her husband, along for the ride today as well. So good to see you both. Laura and Joel, thank you for pulling this all together. Really important event and excellent execution for sure. And hello on behalf of everyone at DEC and of course Governor Hochul, who is a huge fan of this institution, obviously of this city in particular, an alum, as you all know, of Syracuse, so has walked these areas nonstop for many, many years. And I guess this conference here is so vital. The question that I believe the question that you're getting at in this conference, how do local leaders and planners address some of these issues that are global in nature? How do you become more sustainable? How do you solve the policy issues of the day? How do you exchange knowledge? How do you push your local experiences up to people at the state level, people at the federal level? How do you get stronger as a result? There's this great quote, I'm sure we all know it, Tip O'Neill, former Speaker of the House, that all politics is local. Well, it's certainly true for the environment. Everything is local on the environment. Even we talk about global issues, it all comes down to these local issues that you deal with. And I've always thought there's a sliding scale of challenge, federal to local, right? At the federal level, you deal with really big things, but you're so far removed from the people in some ways. The state level, you get a little bit of a mix, right? You deal with the big issues, but occasionally you get into the local issues. And of course, if you're local, you're doing everything. and you're taking all the incoming. You're the first responders to any problems. You're developing the local policies. You're cleaning out the gutters on city streets. You're doing all the things ultimately that are being driven by forces much, much, much bigger than you. And I think one of the things I'm really proud of at DEC, at least over the time I've been there, is making an effort to understand the local. Now, we don't always get it right? Sometimes we think we know everything, but we don't really realize the impact of a proposal or a policy until we get into forums like this, where there's exchange of ideas, or we show up at a fire, or we show up when a water supply has been decimated locally, that something just wasn't working well. So, I try really hard to get that through to my staff, which is just listen to the ground, listen to locals, listen to academia as well, right? I mean, you all here at this amazing institution within the SUNY system are developing a lot of solutions for us at DEC. There's a bit of a pipeline from ESF into DEC, as I think many of you know who know this great institution. But all the research that's being done, I had a chance to sit with some of the students a few months ago in this very building, talking about solving some of the waste issues that we're doing, some of the applied research they're doing, not to sit on a shelf, but to actually come back to us so that we change our laws, our regulations, our practices, and how we then push money out. So there's that, and many of those issues then, of course, to the local point, many of those dollars are being directed locally. So there's a really important convening, I think, of folks in the room here who are dealing with all these issues, making us better, making us smarter, and giving us a chance to address some of these really incredible issues that we're handling right now. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for deciding if you're a public official in the room. How many public officials here in the room elected or appointed? Okay, great. And how many from academia? Right. How many from private sector? And the media. Just joking. Thank you. If you raise your hand to be in public office, or if you raise your hand to be in an institution of higher learning, you said no to something else, probably where you could go and make a lot more money and be more insulated from challenge. And that is, I think, to me, the most noble of decisions that you could have made, to have embraced the challenges of the world, whether it's an academic setting or an elected office, and to do so at this time in history where things are so difficult, right? We feel that every day. If you're cursed like I am to be on Twitter, and Laura on Twitter, you see it. You see the incoming, and it feels overwhelming. Democracy under attack, right? Not just in the Ukraine, of course, but here in our own country, what we lived through in the last few years. The return of the strongman, if you will. The mistrust of institutions. I mean, that really going back into the 2000s, right, with the collapse of the economy in the 2000s, and what that did to people's faith in institutions when they were being sold, literally mortgages in some cases that then bottomed out, and what that meant to faith in institutions. Hoosick Falls in New York here, right? Fear of water supply. Flint, Michigan, fear of water supply and what they were being told in Michigan. Political division, of course. This is not a political speech. But obviously, the performance art that I think characterizes politics these days is something that I think should concern all of us, right? When we're not talking about problems, we're talking about people's problems, the way they look and the way they act. And that's, to me, a sign of some really, really challenging days ahead. We're in our third year of the pandemic, right? It's third or fourth? I'm starting to lose track, right? We're now on a new variant, divisive and alarming Supreme Court rulings, inflation, supply chain issues. We have trouble staffing up our camps because we can't find cooks at our DEC camps. Multiply that all across. I know everyone in this room engaged in hiring or management is having trouble at this point, just putting people to work. The war in Europe, right? How many months? 6 months into that. Widening inequality, right? Richer and richer, poorer and poorer. the perpetual news cycle, honestly, that is just, I think, exhausting all of us. So, and you have on top of that, obviously, what we see is an existential crisis in climate change. And, you know, what that means, just this summer, right, record heat, New York, record droughts. There's a fire we were fighting in just south of Catskills a few weeks ago. And look across the globe as to what's happening right now. It is super alarming, to say the least. You know, if you believe in science and believe in just what you're seeing with your own eyes out there, to see a third of Pakistan underwater right now, what that means for the grain supply, right, moving forward in that part of the world, what that means for hunger in the winter. So there's all kinds of things happening right now. And you've decided to raise your hand to be part of the solution. And I just want to say how grateful I am, and how grateful society should be for people like you in this room, who are dedicated to fixing problems, you know, not making them. And that says a lot about you. It says a lot that you decided to come to this as well. And how do you get better? How do you begin exchanging that information? So I say good luck to all of you with all those crises. No, I'm just joking. I will say this, though. All of those things, I don't mean to sound like the sky is falling, or to pass off a feeling of pessimism. I actually am an extreme optimist, even with all this stuff. It's not just because, you know, Bob and I figured out how to wear the helmet and body armor over the years and just get through it and be resilient in state government, but I am inherently an optimist. I'm an optimist, I think, I was thinking about, you know, why am I an optimist? First of all, I think it's, to go back to you, I think it's because there are people like you who step up, who raise their hand and say, I want to be part of the solution. The other thing is this sort of the capacity of regular people to be great. And usually you see that with a crisis. We're now 21 years and minus a couple days from 9/11. I think what I would say is an unfortunate, fortunate experience during that, when I went down when the towers fell to be part of the response, and you know, at that point we were still looking for people. But I only say this because it's fresh on the mind these days, but also because I had down there sort of an experience that I'd never had in my life, which was to see people at the worst moment, right? The worst moment certainly ever in our country, at least in many, many years, acting at their best, you know, stepping up in a way that, irrespective of politics, irrespective of skin color, irrespective of belief of any kind, people pulling in the same direction. It was almost a religious experience to be part of something like that, and then you see that happen with COVID, the early days of COVID as well, right? You see it happening with floods, with storms. People can come together in an extraordinary way to fix problems, and I'm still trying to figure out what it is about what the timeline is between when something like that happens. People come together in an extraordinary way, and then somehow accordion back out away from each other. And how do we resolve that issue, right? After 9/11, it was, well, just go shopping. Was that the right decision, right? Was that the right thing to tell the country? Or would it have been, let's do something with our institutions to strengthen them, to bolster them, to fix problems, and give people, rather than just a shopping cart, a chance to actually be part of the solution? We saw that in COVID. I saw it firsthand in COVID. I'm way off course here, Bob. This is not a discussion about Rockefeller at all. You know, we saw it during COVID as well. We had 3,000 people at DEC, staff at DEC. Well, the request went up for help. 1,000 people at DEC raised their hands to be part of the solution. Drive-through testing sites, you probably saw those. We ran those. Vaccine sites delivering thousands and thousands of meals. And those 1,000 people that were part of that team, if you will, I think the morale was higher in that group because they were part of the solution. They're part of responding. So I think there's a thread there that I want to keep pulling over time to find out how you continuously strengthen those types of institutions and engage people. Because ultimately, if you respond well, but you lose track of the people, they go off, and ultimately your projects fail. So that's way off course. The third reason I'm optimistic is this unprecedented alignment right now that I think we have. Yes, there's political divisiveness. Yes, it's all horror and whatnot on Twitter. But there's an incredible alignment globally right now on the environment. I had a chance to go to the COP26 conference in Glasgow, Scotland last year, and saw some of that firsthand, saw the energy coming into this from the most unlikely of places, right? I mean, every single country represented, everyone brings a different approach to it, but there was an incredible amount of enthusiasm and optimism. So you see that globally. You see it in the US now, right? Beginning of the summer, we were writing op-eds and making speeches about how the federal government effectively failed us on climate, right? Supreme Court comes in with a terrible decision. We have, the Congress's inability to pass any meaningful legislation. So, well, now that it all falls to the states, and that's a rough position to be in because it's like half the states that are actually doing something about this right now, this climate issue. And then lo and behold, this incredible shift in the passage of the CHIPS Act, right? And of course the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, which is the biggest ever commitment to the climate. So there's a shift underway, and I think you see that strength. Social awareness. Most people, regardless of the political position, most people believe that there's a serious problem with the climate. Most people believe that there's a serious problem with drinking water, right? When we have contamination in drinking water, we have to do something about it. The markets in finance. I mean, I don't think there's a Fortune 500 company right now that doesn't have somebody in their executive suite thinking about sustainability. There isn't a board that isn't demanding action. There aren't shareholders demanding action at this point. And finance, money, the amount of money going into this realm right now to sustain all of these projects, to sustain all these technologies is incredible. Technologies are coming on right now just when we need them most. We're seeing the technologies right when we need them. Like during COVID, what would we have done had Zoom not been invented? It would have been a disaster for our families. It would have been a disaster for our jobs, and we would be seriously set back. I mean, thank God for Zoom. Whoever had thought about that. Same thing with now on where we're trending. Thank God there are companies that make wind turbines. Thank God there are companies that make solar panels. And now they're competing. Now they're more cost effective than the traditional energy sources, right? Yes, we have issues with supply. Yes, we have issues with the grid and all these other things to have to solve. But again, the markets have caught up. Technology has caught up. Academia has been leading the charge. You all have been saying this for years. You've laid the foundational research that we needed to begin making all of these changes in society. And of course, equity. The question of equity is now caught up, right? We lived through that during COVID with the George Floyd killing, and how that is now changing the way we approach the environment, right? The IRA, what it does to bring equity to bear. Here in New York, of course, equity is the center point of what we're doing. So I lay all that out just to say that we really can't squander this opportunity. We can't go another 4 years or another 2 years from now and then change course again. We just can't afford it, right? We can't afford it as a society. We will be shooting ourselves in the foot from a jobs perspective, an economic perspective. We need to take advantage of this opportunity and change in the right way, bring everyone up and leave no one left behind. So let's talk a little bit about New York and what we're doing. I'm definitely proud to say, maybe some would argue, but I think we've got the biggest and boldest approach to the environment in the country. I really do. We're leading on all fronts, not just to lead, right? I think New Yorkers inherently want to lead. They want to be at the forefront of things always, that New York spirit. But we also see, I think, sense and obligation to lead. We're the big East Coast state. California gets all the credit. We get a little upset about California once in a while. Yeah, they're great, but we're a little bit cooler. The sun rises here first, so it sets there first. Whatever. We're up to some pretty amazing things. The last time I was in this room here looking out at the crowd was during our climate hearings. We did 11 of them, or 15, I think, total around the state, but 10 in person, one here in Syracuse, and able to engage with regular citizens who wanted to give us input on our state's climate, our draft climate plan, which is nation-leading. It was a nation-leading law when we signed it back in 2019. Right now, I think we're ahead of almost every other state, right? Net zero by 2050, all of these timelines, all these benchmarks to hit these points. It is going to be the hardest thing we've ever done as a society. Again, doing it in such a way as to not leave anyone behind. And that means labor unions, it means environmental justice communities, it means towns, municipalities. How do you bring everyone across the finish line together on that ultimately and grow the state, grow the economy of the state, increase jobs? Directing our investments. The law requires 40% investment into disadvantaged communities. That's powerful, right? That helps us change things. It helps us change the damage of the past ultimately and make those investments where they're needed most, but also to give those folks a voice in ultimately the outcome, and not just receive direction from above, but really be part of the solution. At the same time, we're doing the planning, right? This nation-leading plan, which I'm really proud to be co-chairing with NYSDEC, Doreen Harris, fantastic president of NYSDEC. We're national leaders on wind, solar, offshore wind right now, right? Geothermal. It's coming. Hydro is here. And for you all, I think our Climate Smart Communities program is, I know there's a few. Who in the room has a Climate Smart Communities program? Yep. Nice. Manlius. A few others. Excellent. Really important program because that's some of that connection there that I think we need to begin making more, which is these big statewide policies, all of our dollars, how do we bring those dollars to bear to help all of the local needs? So I was in Manlius a few months ago at the ribbon cutting of a charging station, and fantastic. Happy to support fantastic local programs like that. They did switch outs of old lights and lighting. So that's one of I think 364 municipalities now around the state, including Onondaga County and the city of Syracuse, doing the same thing. Right, coming to the state, becoming climate smart certified, and then competing for those dollars. The $50 million that we've spent on this program over the years has been a serious winner. So please, if you're looking at dollars, think about the Climate Smart Communities program. It's half the state's population now covered by one of these certifications. And then adapting our state, right? It's not just mitigating, it's adapting. We have, Bob, I think, certainly knows the Environmental Protection Fund. When Bob was around, I asked for more, and he'd give me a couple chump change. What was it, 136 million, I think, when I started, and then you kind of boosted it to 138. Well, Bob, it's a $400 million program now, so thank you for joining SUNY. That's a really important program. There are so many funding sources within the EPF. Most of that goes out to communities, and we're thrilled to support communities on that. And it's really on the adaptation side. It's how do we make our state ready? We're going to have a changing climate. This climate is going to change. How do we make our communities more resilient? Right? How do we help you, as planners, as local officials, as academics? How do we help you? Get to the next level? Well, that's always through funding, but it's also through expertise. We've done really good work on the South Coast, right? The post-Superstorm Sandy, the billions of dollars that went into recovering Long Island, New York City. Incredible work went in. Getting the federal government to say yes to the $60 billion, right, Bob, of money that we needed to recover. Making New York City itself more resilient, critically important for the entirety of New York State. And we're not done with all the projects. We're still building down there. We're still working with the Army Corps on the $60 billion program downstate. But that will leave the state more resilient. We did a slightly analogous project on the Great Lakes. Some folks probably remember here the flooding of the Great Lakes, sustained flooding, 2017, 2019 along the North Coast. Created this resiliency and economic development initiative, which was completely locally focused. All of the projects came up from local leadership in that, right? And the dollars our state expertise would go down to effectively support the supervisors and mayors all along the coast, $300 million worth of projects to make that coast more resilient, right? So that's that theory of resiliency, that we have to make the state more and more secure. We've got this incredible $4.5 billion Clean Water Infrastructure Act, right? Now in our sixth year of that, I think. Again, grant dollars to munis, right? Let's bolster our water infrastructure. Let's kind of reduce the amount of stormwater that gets into the system in the first place. Let's take some of the burden off of you as local leaders who are trying to make ends meet on your budgets. That grant program is not going anywhere. It's a great program. Please look into it if you haven't. Also, we have a $1 billion loan program, the biggest in the country. $1.1 billion, what's like $1.1 billion through our Environmental Facilities Corporation. If you need a loan for, I feel like a car salesman. If you need a loan for your wastewater, come to us. We'll take care of you. You'll leave happy. And then in the coming year, on the water side, and this is potentially the real game changer for us, is the Bond Act, which the governor has put forth as a proposal that's going to go in front of the voters this fall, $4.2 billion. And that will go into all kinds of really important projects: flood risk and reduction, water quality improvement, resilient infrastructure, open space conservation, climate mitigation. I mean, the last time we did a Bond Act was in the mid-90s, 1996, I think it was. We hadn't done one since. Now we have a chance to move these dollars out into the state to truly make New York State resilient, right? To help the communities and respond to all these problems that you're experiencing, to connect communities to nature, right? Urban communities to rural areas, to reduce the amount of flooding, to mitigate the impacts of climate change, to make schools greener. There's a whole pot of money in there for greening schools and reducing emissions in schools. This will be, assuming it passes, a transformative, truly transformative initiative, and we're so excited to be working on that. I will make an invitation writ large on that. We want to fund good ideas through that. Assuming it passes again, we want to be able to move those dollars quickly into really good projects. So please work with the state on that. If you're a local official and you've got good ideas, to the extent we can fund them legally, we would love to. So consider that an open invitation, and obviously more to come on that. There'll be other folks doing education and advocacy around the Bond Act. And of course, if it passes, there's going to be a lot of work from our end to go out and speak to you and speak to communities all around the state about that. I mentioned the federal side as well. I mentioned the IRA. Again, $370 billion of investment in the environment, and we're poised to compete for those dollars. We're poised very well for the reasons I've laid out, right? Because we've been at this now for so long, other states who are playing catch-up have to compete for the dollars that we, I think, are very well positioned to compete for. So that goes right back to sort of this alignment issue, this reason of optimism, this unprecedented alignment that we have right now. This everyone pulling in the same direction. Yes, against certain headwinds, but I'm optimistic because of the partnerships that we've been able to create. We want to get there with you. We want to do this with you. We want to get better with you. And we want your best ideas. And we'll co-opt your best ideas happily. That's, I will say that openly. And we'll bring you in for all of the solution making. This has to be a partnership approach to the environment. And we know that you're on the front lines. Again, if you're local government, if you're in the communities, we know you're in the front lines. I just want to end with maybe a to-do, which is to embrace this concept of communications, which is often left out, even in the climate work that we're doing now, this nation-leading climate work. It's sort of like, oh yeah, we have to also do communications. Well, that's really the wrong approach, right? Because we're talking about big, scary things. Change is really scary. Don't forget how important it is to communicate and communicate effectively. We don't have this 7-day or 15-day crisis, right, to engage people. We have to do this over 10, 20, 30 years. So how do you create the institutions to communicate out to folks that you need to be part of this solution as well? Here are the tools for you as individual residents of the state of New York to be part of the solution, and that's what we have to really focus on. We have to focus on building those communications pathways and really giving people those answers that they all have in the backs of their minds. Is this going to be more expensive for me? Am I going to lose my job? All legitimate questions, right? So we have to communicate that out. And that's something that we'll be doing a lot more this year. But I want to thank you, really, for having me here. It's great to be back in Syracuse. Always awesome to be here with great friends at ESF. I told Bob that I'd be willing to take a couple questions timing-wise, but I'd defer to you, Laura, maybe on timing. One or two? Okay, all right. I'm glad I came after lunch. It's just a kiss of death to go right before. So, happy to take one or two questions. Laura's going to call the shots. Anyone? Nobody from DEC can ask a question. If it's a tough question, it's for Bob. If it's a softball, I'll take it.
Come on, we don't always get a chance, right?
Yes, just tell me who you are and what your question is. Oh, well, somebody in the back. We'll pass around the microphone.
Hi, this will be quick. I'm Lisa Warnicki. I've had many hats over the years, decades. Anyway, my question for you is how are you and your counterparts on the cabinet working with other state agencies and also federal agencies in terms of synchronizing your outreach to local governments? We heard this morning about your programming with clean communities and also NYSDEC, I think. And thanks, Joni. And but there's also many federal programs through like the Natural Resources Conservation Service. There's 2,000 counties that have offices. So in New York, there's several also. Each county has those offices, and they're helping with natural resources conservation, the old SCS. And also the Forest Service, Department of Interior, USGS, even U.S. Geological Survey has water resources agencies in Albany. Every state capital has one. So how are you synchronizing your efforts on the ground? You have quite a field presence, here in Syracuse and elsewhere. So how are your field staff working with the field staff of other state and federal agencies to really come together with a common voice when you're reaching out to those 2,000 plus local governments in New York State?
Great question. I would say it is always a challenge to communicate with a single voice, right? We go through the cycles of Washington and even Albany, and yet now we're at this point where we have more money than ever to invest into the environment. With the passage of the IRA, actually, we've been having this very discussion, that now there is so much need out there. Now there's federal dollars, state dollars, there's local money as well. How do we make it streamlined? So we're literally having this very discussion right now, building better websites, one-stop shops. Because right now, if you are a municipality, you've got to kind of hunt and pick. You're trying to, throwing darts, trying to find the right landing page, and ultimately getting through what is some cases a difficult application system. So I would say it's a work in progress. We're now blessed to have the dollars, but we need to focus our efforts on making it easier to find those dollars, and it's a work in progress. I would just say, keep pushing ideas up, please, to us. We know that effective communication starts with making it easy for people to find things, and right now I'm not sure we're there.
Oh, we have time?
I think so, Laura. One more? Okay.
You might change your mind after I ask the question.
Uh-oh, time's out.
So, worst case scenario, Lee Zeldin wins the governorship. How is NYSDEC programs that we've all been talking about and pushing insulated organizationally, by law, et cetera, to continue to make progress in the worst case scenario?
I won't get into the politics. I will just say, finally, now we have a law in New York, right? The CLCPA is law, passed decisively in both houses, signed by the governor. That's going to drive where we are going as a state for many years to come. That's the advantage of having a law as opposed to just policy, right? And now we have a law at the federal level. Same thing. The IRA is going to be difficult to dismantle if someone so chooses in the future. So I'm up. That's why I talked about my reason for optimism. It's that alignment at every level. and the durability of having laws now instead of just policies. So that's as far as I'll go on that one. Thank you, though. Laura, that's it. She just gave me the neck. But thank you all very much. Good luck.